Lou Castro was living the high life. Expensive cars, designer clothes. He was the epitome of luxury, always seen in the finest attire and driving the latest models of high-end vehicles. A mansion on the hill, sprawling and opulent, stood as a testament to his wealth. He seemed to have it all, but no one knew where the money came from. The neighbors were curious, often seen whispering and pointing towards his grand estate. Castro claimed to be an entrepreneur, a self-made man. He spoke confidently about his business ventures, yet details were always scarce. But his business ventures were shrouded in secrecy. Confidential documents and shadowy dealings were the norm. He never seemed to work, yet his wealth grew exponentially. Lounging by the pool, surrounded by luxury, he appeared to live a life of leisure. The neighbors whispered, their curiosity tinged with suspicion. They couldn't help but wonder how he managed to afford such a lifestyle. But Castro remained an enigma, hidden behind a veil of extravagance and vagueness. His mysterious aura only added to the intrigue. Detective Ron Goodwin caught Castro's case like a hot potato. It landed on his desk unexpectedly, but he was ready for the challenge. A routine background check, a whisper of impropriety from an anonymous source. It was enough to pique Goodwin's interest. Goodwin, a seasoned detective with a nose for the truth, smelled something rotten. He had a knack for sensing when things didn't add up. Castro's lack of a traceable income, coupled with his lavish spending, set off alarm bells. The detective knew he had to dig deeper. Goodwin started digging, pulling at loose threads, determined to unravel the mystery behind Castro's sudden fortune. He meticulously connected the dots, hoping to find a lead. Little did he know, he was stepping into a bizarre and dangerous game. The deeper he went, the more perilous it became. Goodwin started with the basics: financial records, employment history, personal contacts. He left no stone unturned. But Castro was a ghost. There were no clear leads, no obvious connections. His financial records were a confusing maze of shell corporations and offshore accounts. It was designed to mislead and confuse. His employment history was non-existent. There were no records of any legitimate work, and his personal contacts, when questioned, provided vague and contradictory information. It was as if they were all in on the secret. The deeper Goodwin delved, the more convinced he became that Castro was not who he claimed to be. There was a hidden identity, a secret life. This wasn't just a case of unexplained wealth, it was something far more sinister. Goodwin realized he was up against a formidable adversary. As Goodwin continued his investigation, whispers about Castro's past began to surface. These whispers were not just idle gossip, they were fragments of a hidden life, a life that Castro had meticulously kept in the shadows. Rumors of a previous life, a life shrouded in darkness and deceit, a life that seemed to be filled with secrets that no one dared to speak of openly. Some whispered of connections to organized crime, others of shady business dealings gone wrong. These were not just small-time rumors, they hinted at a web of corruption and danger. The more Goodwin heard, the more convinced he became that Castro was hiding something big, something he was willing to go to great lengths to protect. It was as if every piece of information he uncovered led to more questions than answers. The whispers were like pieces of a puzzle, scattered and incomplete. Each piece seemed to hold a part of the truth, but the full picture remained elusive. But Goodwin was determined to put them together, to uncover the truth behind the rumors and reveal the man behind the mask. He knew that persistence was key, and he was ready to dig as deep as necessary. One rumor in particular caught Goodwin's attention. It was a story that seemed too bizarre to be true, yet too detailed to be a mere fabrication. A story about a man who looked a lot like Castro, who had died in a suspicious car accident years ago. The circumstances of the accident were murky, and the details were unsettling. The man had been heavily insured, and his death had left his family with a hefty life insurance payout. This raised even more questions about the true nature of the accident. Could this be the source of Castro's wealth? The sudden influx of money seemed too coincidental to ignore. Could he be living under a stolen identity? The possibility was both intriguing and terrifying. The possibility sent a chill down Goodwin's spine. If true, it meant that Castro was capable of far more than anyone had imagined. He knew he was onto something big, something that could potentially expose a dangerous criminal. The stakes were higher than ever, and the risks were immense. Goodwin dug deeper, poring over old police reports and newspaper articles, desperate to find a connection between Castro and the man in the accident. His persistence paid off. The more he uncovered, the clearer the picture became. He uncovered a police sketch of the deceased man, and the resemblance to Castro was uncanny. It was as if the past was staring him in the face. It was time to bring in the family. They held the key to unlocking the final pieces of the puzzle. They were reluctant to talk, still grieving the loss of their loved one. The pain was still fresh, and the memories were raw, but when Goodwin showed them Castro's picture, their faces turned white as ghosts. The resemblance was undeniable and the shock was palpable. They confirmed it. The man in the photo was their brother, their son, the man they thought was dead. The revelation was both heartbreaking and illuminating, bringing Goodwin one step closer to the truth. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation, shaking the very foundation of what they thought they knew. Castro wasn't just a fraud, he was a master manipulator, living a lie built on death and deception. His charm and cunning masked a dark, sinister agenda. Goodwin discovered a pattern, a chilling trail of tragedy and riches that followed Castro wherever he went. Each clue brought him closer to the horrifying truth, a string of seemingly accidental deaths, each one leaving behind a grieving beneficiary who suddenly came into a large sum of money from a life insurance policy. The pattern was too consistent to be mere coincidence, and at the heart of each tragedy, lurking in the shadows, was Lou Castro. His presence was a constant, ominous thread in the fabric of these tragedies. Goodwin worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle, connecting the dots between Castro and the victims. Each connection was a step closer to unveiling the full extent of Castro's malevolence. He discovered that Castro had befriended each of them, gaining their trust, becoming their confidant, often persuading them to take out large life insurance policies, naming him as the beneficiary. His manipulation was both subtle and insidious. He was like a dark angel, appearing in their lives just before tragedy struck. His timing was impeccable, his methods ruthless. The evidence was mounting, a damning indictment of Castro's sinister scheme. Each piece of evidence painted a clearer picture of his calculated cruelty. But Goodwin needed more. He needed concrete proof, something that would stand up in court. The stakes were high and the burden of proof was immense. The case took an even darker turn when Goodwin uncovered evidence of foul play. The realization was both shocking and horrifying. The accidents weren't accidents at all. They were meticulously planned and executed. The car crash that had supposedly killed Castro all those years ago had been staged. It was a ruse to fake his own death and escape scrutiny. The fire that claimed the life of a young widow was arson. It was another piece of Castro's deadly puzzle. And the boating accident, a tragic case of sabotage. Each incident was a calculated move in Castro's game. Castro wasn't just taking advantage of unfortunate circumstances, he was orchestrating them, playing God with the lives of innocent people to fuel his lavish lifestyle. His greed knew no bounds. This wasn't just fraud, it was murder. The full extent of Castro's crimes was finally coming to light, revealing a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his twisted goals. As Goodwin delved deeper into Castro's life, he uncovered another layer to his deception. Castro had created a cult of personality, a group of followers who believed he possessed supernatural powers, the ability to grant them wealth and prosperity. He preyed on their vulnerability, their desperation, promising them a piece of his own fabricated success. These weren't hardened criminals, they were everyday people, blinded by Castro's charisma and seduced by his promises of a better life. They were pawns in his game, unknowingly complicit in his web of lies. Castro had spun a web of deceit so intricate, so believable, that his followers were willing to do anything for him. They turned a blind eye to his suspicious activities, his ever-growing wealth, the trail of bodies that seemed to follow him. They believed his lies, his explanations, his claims that he was being targeted by jealous rivals. He had them completely under his spell, their loyalty unwavering, their belief in him absolute. Goodwin knew that to bring Castro down, he needed to break his hold over his followers. He needed them to see Castro for who he really was, a con man, a manipulator, a murderer. But it wouldn't be easy. They were fiercely loyal, blinded by their belief in him. Goodwin needed a crack in the armor, a seed of doubt, something to make them question everything they thought they knew. The break in the case came from an unlikely source, Castro's own vanity. He loved the attention, the adulation, the power he wielded over his followers. He couldn't resist the urge to brag, to subtly hint at his dark secrets, to revel in his own cleverness. He thought he was untouchable, above suspicion. He was wrong. One of his followers, a young woman who had started to have doubts, overheard Castro boasting about his accidental death scheme to one of his inner circle. She was horrified. This wasn't the man she thought she knew, the man she had believed in. The young woman contacted Goodwin, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. She told him everything about Castro's boasts, about his hold over his followers, about the suspicions that had been swirling in her mind for months. She was scared, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She had to expose Castro for the fraud he was, even if it meant putting herself at risk. Her testimony was the key Goodwin had been waiting for. It corroborated everything he had suspected, providing a first-hand account of Castro's true nature. He moved quickly, securing a warrant for Castro's arrest and raiding his mansion. They found him surrounded by his followers, his face a mask of disbelief and anger as they led him away in handcuffs. The game was up.